Ever finish a book and just need to talk about it? Welcome to Book Labs, the show that takes a deep dive into your favorite books, usually in 10 minutes or less. Whether it's a literary masterpiece, a guilty pleasure, or a hidden gem, we break it down, explore what makes it great, and maybe even change how you see it. So grab that first cup of coffee and let's get into it. Welcome to Book Labs.
Welcome to another deep dive with us.
Yeah, it's going to be a good one.
So today we're diving into Blake Boles' book, The Art of Self-Learning.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, this one looks really fascinating, all about taking control of your learning destiny.
That's definitely a theme we see popping up more and more.
It is, and Boles is like right at the forefront of that whole movement.
Yeah, he really is. He's been advocating for this kind of self-directed learning for years now, really empowering people to kind of ditch the traditional education system and take charge.
Yeah, and it's funny, like, even just reading the introduction to the book, I felt this, like, almost this, like, rebellious energy, like, yeah, let's break free from the textbooks and classrooms.
Right, there's definitely that sense of, like, taking control and charting your own course, which is exciting, right?
Yeah, totally. So in this deep dive, we're going to unpack some of the most exciting concepts and practical strategies from the book.
Okay, sounds good.
We'll touch on, how to set personalized learning goals, how to find resources that fit your unique needs, and even how to, like, hack your brain to stay motivated and overcome self-doubt.
The mental game is huge when it comes to self-directed learning.
Oh, it's huge. And it's something that traditional education often overlooks,
Totally.
So I think this deep dive is going to be super valuable for anyone who's ever felt frustrated with the limitations of traditional learning, or just, curious about what it really means to be a self-directed learner.
I think so, too. I mean, the world is changing so fast these days. The skills you need to thrive are constantly evolving.
Exactly. So being able to adapt to learn new things quickly and effectively, those are like essential skills for navigating the 21st century.
Absolutely. And that's where self-directed learning really comes in.
So let's jump right in. What does it really mean to be a self-directed learner? Like, what's the core of this whole philosophy?
Well, I think one of the things that makes Boles' definition so interesting is that it's not just about, reading a bunch of books or taking online courses.
Right.
It's about approaching learning with a certain mindset. It's about being driven by your own curiosity and your own goals.
Okay, I'm with you, but how does that actually play out, like, in the real world?
So imagine, like, someone who's passionate about photography. A self-directed learner in that scenario, they might start, I don't know, like experimenting with different camera settings, or they might watch online tutorials, or even seek out a mentor.
Right, someone who's already doing the thing they want to learn.
Exactly. It's about taking initiative and, like, tailoring your learning to your own needs and interests.
Okay, so it's less about where you learn and more about how you learn.
Yeah, exactly. And it's about who's driving the process, You're in the driver's seat.
You are. So speaking of, like, ditching the traditional classroom, I remember, like, in school, I used to get so frustrated when the curriculum didn't align with what I was actually interested in.
Oh, yeah. I think we've all been there.
It was like I was just going through the motions instead of, like, actually genuinely learning.
And that's one of the big problems that Bowles points out about these rigid educational systems.
Totally. So how does he address that?
Well, he argues that, these rigid systems, they can stifle creativity and curiosity.
Yeah.
And instead, he advocates for a more personalized learning journey, one that's driven by your passions and tailored to your unique learning style.
Okay, yeah. It's like finally I get to learn what I actually want to learn.
Right. But here's the thing. He emphasizes the importance of setting, like, really clear, specific goals. Like, it's not enough to say, oh, I want to learn about history. You need to have a vision of what you actually want to achieve.
Oh, okay, like a roadmap so I don't get lost in, like, the vast sea of knowledge.
Yeah, exactly. Like, do you want to, like, master a particular historical period, or research your family tree, or even, like, write a historical fiction novel?
Yeah, because otherwise it's just like this overwhelming mass of information.
Right, you need that focus.
You do, but I think even if you have that focus, even if you've got your goal, like, finding a starting point can be so daunting.
It can be. There are so many resources out there.
There are endless books, online courses, potential mentors. Like, how do you even begin to navigate all that?
Well, and that's where resourcefulness comes in. which Boles talks about a lot.
Okay.
He encourages you to become like a detective, like uncover the resources that actually fit your specific goals.
Okay, so don't just like passively consume whatever's thrown at you. Be more proactive in your search.
Exactly. He highlights the power of libraries, of course, but also online courses, so many of which are free these days.
Right, right. And he even suggests like reaching out directly to experts.
He does. And, sometimes they're more accessible than you might think.
Yeah. Okay, so we're being resourceful, we're finding the resources that work for us, and then we're taking action.
Right.
And this is what I really love about the book, is this concept of learning by doing.
Yes. Active learning. Absolutely.
I am a hands-on learner, so this just totally spoke to me. Does he give any specific examples of how to put this into practice? Because I think like the theoretical is one thing, but like how do you actually do that?
He does. He does. So let's say you want to learn to play the guitar.
Because,
Instead of just like reading about chords and scales, he would encourage you to pick up the instrument
right.
and just start strumming. Even if it sounds terrible at first,
It probably will at first.
it probably will. But that act of doing, it actually builds muscle memory. It reinforces that theoretical knowledge you have.
Yeah, you're not just like passively absorbing information.
Exactly. You're actively engaging with it.
I love that. But, let's be real for a second. Self-directed learning is not always easy.
It's not a walk in the park, that's for sure.
Motivation and discipline can be such struggles, especially without like the external structure of a traditional classroom. How does Bowles address these challenges?
He does. And he's very upfront about the fact that, these are real hurdles that people face.
Right.
He suggests, for example, techniques for maintaining momentum. Even if no one's holding you accountable, set personal deadlines for yourself.
Oh, that's a good idea.
He also talks about the power of having an accountability partner.
Oh, yeah. Like someone to cheer you on.
Yeah, like a cheerleader or like someone who's kind of in the trenches with you, going through a similar journey so you can celebrate wins together and offer support when things get tough.
Right, because you're not in this alone.
Exactly. It's a very social process, actually, even though it can feel very individualistic.
Yeah, I love that. But what about the mental hurdles? Self-doubt, procrastination, like that feeling of, am I even doing this right?
Oh, yeah. The mental game is huge. It's like half the battle, maybe even more.
Totally. Like, how does he tackle those inner demons, the ones that are like, you're not good enough, you're going to fail?
He does. And, one thing he emphasizes is recognizing those feelings. Instead of trying to suppress them or pretend they're not there.
Yeah, don't ignore them.
Exactly. Understand where they're coming from. And he has some really interesting strategies, actually. One of them is breaking down those large goals that you have, break them down into smaller, more manageable steps.
Oh, so it feels less overwhelming.
Exactly. And then you can start to create this sense of accomplishment as you start checking those smaller steps off your list.
Okay, yeah, you're building momentum. You're like, okay, I can do this.
Yeah. And that can help to build that sense of confidence and combat that feeling of self-doubt.
But sometimes, even with those small steps, the fear of failure can be so paralyzing.
It can be. But, Bowles, he has a really interesting way of looking at failure. He stresses the importance of reframing it as an opportunity for learning.
Okay, not a setback, but a stepping stone.
Yeah, exactly. So instead of seeing mistakes as these terrible things that are holding you back,
Right.
view them as valuable feedback, essential for growth and improvement. Is those are the moments where you're actually learning the most.
You are. Okay, so we're shifting our mindset, but let's be honest, fitting self-directed learning into an already packed schedule, I mean, for a lot of people, that can feel like a really daunting task.
It can be. It's where do I find the time?
Exactly. It's like, I've got work, I've got family, I've got life. How do I add one more thing to my plate?
Right. And Bowles acknowledges that most people are already busy. So his advice is not about adding more to your plate.
Okay.
It's about finding those pockets of time that already exist in your day.
So it's not about like making more time. It's about using your time differently.
Exactly. So maybe it's listening to a podcast during your commute.
Oh, that's what I do.
Right. Or maybe it's reading a few pages of a book before bed, or using your lunch break to watch a tutorial video.
Okay. Yeah, those little moments, they add up.
They do. It's about integrating learning into your existing routine.
Yeah, and this is what really got me excited about this book, was this concept of the 20-hour rule. It sounds almost too good to be true.
It does, doesn't it? You can learn anything in 20 hours.
It does. So how does it work? What kind of results can people expect? Because it sounds like magic.
It's not magic, but it's pretty amazing.
Okay.
So Bowles argues that you can become surprisingly confident in almost any skill with just 20 hours of focused, deliberate practice.
Wow, that's kind of mind-blowing.
It is. It is. And he even provides a framework for like maximizing those 20 hours.
Okay, I need to hear more about this. Like, how do you do that?
So it's about, first of all, breaking down the skill into smaller, more manageable chunks.
Oh, okay. So like we were talking about before, those small steps.
Exactly, exactly. And then practicing those chunks strategically. So for instance, if you want to, let's say, learn to speak basic Spanish,
Okay.
you might focus on like mastering common greetings and phrases first,
Right.
and then gradually build up to more complex grammar and vocabulary. So it's not about like mindlessly putting in the time.
It's about being intentional with your practice.
Exactly. It's quality over quantity.
I like that. Okay, so we've broken it down into manageable chunks. We're practicing deliberately. What else? What other practical gem ever in this book?
Well, another one that he highlights is building a learning network. So, recognizing that you don't have to go it alone on this health learning journey.
Right, like find your people.
Exactly, exactly. Find your tribe. Connecting with others can provide support, motivation, and like really valuable insights that you might not have thought of on your own.
Yeah, totally. So he suggests what, finding mentors, joining online communities?
He does, attending workshops, conferences, anything where you can kind of immerse yourself in a community of people who are passionate about the same things that you are.
I love that. But like I'm curious about the specifics. Does he give any like actionable advice on how to actually build that network?
He does, he does. He really encourages readers to be proactive. So like reach out to people whose work you admire. Participate in online forums related to your interests.
Okay, so putting yourself out there.
Yeah, yeah. And don't be afraid to offer your own skills or knowledge to others as well. It's about creating this like, reciprocal relationship where everyone benefits.
So it's not just about taking, it's about giving back too.
Exactly.
I love that. And speaking of connecting and sharing knowledge, let's talk about technology. We live in a world where information is literally at our fingertips.
It is. It's amazing, but it can also be like a little bit overwhelming.
It's a lot. So how does he address the role of technology in all of this?
He does. He acknowledges that, the internet and digital tools have been absolutely transformative for self-directed learning.
Yeah, the access is incredible.
It is. I mean, we have access to online courses, videos, articles, forums, expert opinions from around the globe, and it's all like just a click away.
Yeah, but it can also be a black hole of distraction.
Oh, absolutely. The potential for distraction is huge.
It is. So how do we avoid that information overload? How do we make sure that we're actually using technology effectively for learning? Because it can easily just become like a time suck.
It can. And Bowles is very aware of that. So he talks about like the importance of being discerning with your sources.
Okay, so not just clicking on every link that pops up.
Exactly. Developing strategies for curating information, like really being intentional about what you're consuming.
Okay, yeah. Curate your own learning experience.
Exactly. And setting boundaries to avoid digital distractions.
Yes, boundaries are so important.
They are. So, maybe it's setting time limits for certain online activities or using tools that block distracting websites.
Oh, I need to do it.
Or like creating a dedicated learning space where, you go to that space and you're in learning mode.
Right, and you're not tempted by all the other things.
Exactly.
Okay, this is great stuff. So we're using technology wisely, we're setting boundaries, we're being intentional, but I think it's time we bring this back to the real world a little bit. Like, how does all this self-directed learning translate into tangible benefits? Like, I'm eager to hear some success stories.
Oh, there's some great ones in the book. Really inspiring examples of people who have achieved incredible things through self-directed learning.
Okay, lay it on me.
So there's one story, it really stuck with me, about a woman who taught herself coding entirely through online resources.
Wow, that's amazing.
And she ended up landing her dream job at a tech startup.
No way. So it's not just like a hobby thing, it can lead to real-world success.
Exactly. And then there's another one about a man who turned his passion for woodworking into a thriving business, all because it taught himself through books, videos, mentorship.
Okay, so like, not just career advancement, but also like, personal fulfillment.
Exactly. And I think it's important to remember that it's not just about those big, flashy success stories.
Right, right.
It's also about those everyday ways that self-directed learning can empower you.
Like what?
Well, maybe it helps you to like advance in your current career, or it just makes you a more well-rounded and interesting person, or it just gives you the confidence to pursue your passions.
Yeah, that's so important.
It is. And let's not forget about the job market. Things are changing so rapidly these days.
They are. Adaptability is key.
It is. And the self-directed learning is like the perfect way to stay ahead of the curve because you're constantly learning, you're constantly adapting.
Absolutely. So we've painted a pretty inspiring picture of self-directed learning so far, but let's be real, there have to be some downsides, right? It can't be all sunshine and roses. What are some of the critiques or limitations?
Well, one valid concern is the lack of structure. Without that external framework of a traditional classroom, some people might find it challenging to stay on track.
Right, because you're your own teacher.
Exactly. You have to become your own curriculum designer.
Yeah, that's a lot of responsibility.
It is. But the book also emphasizes that this freedom also allows for a level of personalization and flexibility that you just don't get with traditional education.
Right. Okay, so it's about finding that balance.
Exactly.
So it's not all or nothing. It's about figuring out like what works for you and your learning style.
Exactly.
Okay. What about ensuring a well-rounded education? If you're choosing your own learning path, how do you make sure that you're not missing out on important stuff?
That's a really valid concern, and it's something that self-directed learners need to be mindful of. So, Boles, he encourages exploring a variety of subjects, even those outside your immediate interests.
Okay, so don't get too narrow.
Exactly. And he stresses the importance of seeking feedback from others, whether it's from mentors, peers, or even online communities.
So it's about being proactive.
Exactly. It's like checking in with yourself, checking in with others, and making sure that you're not, just staying in your own little bubble.
Yeah, because it's easy to get stuck in an echo chamber, especially online.
It is. And then, the other question that comes up a lot is self-directed learning something that everyone can do? Or does it require a certain, personality type?
Right, like do you have to be a certain kind of person to be successful at this?
Yeah, that's a great question. And Bowles is very honest about the fact that, self-directed learning does require a certain level of self-motivation, discipline, and comfort with ambiguity.
Okay, yeah, because it's not always a clear path.
It's not. And he acknowledges that it's definitely not for everyone.
Right.
But for those who are naturally curious, who enjoy taking initiative, and who thrive on that freedom to explore their own interests.
Yeah, the self-starters.
Exactly. It can be incredibly rewarding.
Awesome. Well, this has been a great start to our deep dive. We've covered a lot of ground already, but there's so much more to explore in the book. So we're going to take a quick break.
All right.
And when we come back, we'll delve deeper into the long-term benefits of self-directed learning and some final thoughts from Blake Boles. Stay with us.
See you in a bit.
New year, new goals, new mindset. Whether you're pushing boundaries or giving yourself grace, Not Human is here for the journey. Bold designs, effortless comfort, because being human is just the beginning. Start fresh at nothmn.com. And now, back to the show.
Welcome back. We left off talking about some of the benefits and, even some of the downsides of self-directed learning.
Yeah, we were getting into the nitty-gritty.
Yeah, and one thing that I keep coming back to is this idea of personal growth. It's not just about acquiring skills. It's about who you become in the process.
Absolutely. It's like that whole thing about teaching a man to fish versus giving him the fish.
Right. It's not just about the information. It's about developing that mindset of lifelong curiosity.
Yeah, it's about cultivating that love of learning.
Yeah.
And embracing the challenges that come with it.
And that really resonates with me because I've always felt like learning should be joyful. It shouldn't feel like a chore.
Right. It should be something that you're excited about.
Exactly. And too often, I think in traditional education settings, that joy gets lost. It becomes all about grades and assessments.
And meeting external expectations.
Yeah. But self-directed learning, it kind of brings that joy back to the forefront,
It does. It reminds us that learning is a gift, not a chore.
I love that. And I imagine that sense of joy and fulfillment can have a ripple effect in other areas of your life as well.
Oh, totally. I mean, think about it. The more you learn, the more confident you become.
Right. You're I can figure things out.
Exactly. And that confidence, it spills over into other areas of your life. You become more engaged, more resilient,
Yeah. You're not afraid to try new things.
Exactly. So as we're wrapping up our deep dive into the art of self-learning, what are some key takeaways that you think are going to stick with people?
Yeah. What are the big things that we want people to walk away with?
Well, I think one of the biggest is that learning doesn't have to be confined to a classroom.
Right. It's not about the setting.
Exactly. It can happen anywhere, anytime, and it can be driven by your own unique interests and passions.
Yeah, you get to choose.
You do. And Bowles really encourages us to be active participants in our own learning.
To seek out the things that excite us.
Exactly. And, to embrace that journey of discovery, it's not always going to be easy.
There will be bumps in the road.
There will be. But that's part of the process.
Yeah, and it's about remembering that learning isn't just about accumulating information. It's about transforming yourself.
Becoming a different person.
Yes. Okay, so what other gems of wisdom did you pull from this book?
Well, another one that really stuck with me is the importance of embracing uncertainty.
Okay, so being comfortable with not knowing everything.
Yeah. Bowles reminds us that it's okay to not have all the answers,
Yeah.
to feel lost or confused sometimes. In fact, those are the moments where the most powerful learning happens.
Oh, interesting. So it's about like leaning into that discomfort.
Exactly. When we step outside of our comfort zone and confront the unknown, that's when we really grow.
So be comfortable with being a beginner.
Yeah, exactly. Embrace the messiness of it all.
I love that. And I think that's a really empowering message for people.
I think so too. It takes the pressure off.
It does. Okay, so we've talked about embracing uncertainty. We've talked about finding joy in the process. What else?
Well, and I think this book does a fantastic job of reminding us that learning is a lifelong journey.
Oh, yeah, it's not like you graduate and then you're done.
No, it's not like checking a box.
It's ongoing.
It is. It's this continuous process of exploration and discovery and growth that should really last a lifetime. And it's unique to each individual.
So there's no like right or wrong way to do it.
Exactly. As long as you're actively engaged and you enjoy the process, that's what matters. It's about finding what works for you, what sparks your curiosity, what makes you feel alive.
And I think that's what makes self-directed learning so powerful. It's like you get to be in control. You choose your own adventure.
Exactly. You're the architect of your own learning journey.
This has been such a great conversation. I feel like I've learned so much already.
Me too.
But I want to leave our listeners with something to ponder, a question to kind of spark their own self-directed learning journey. So if you could unlock any knowledge or skill in the world, what would it be?
That's a good one. And how would you start your journey?
Yeah, like what would be your first step? It's something to think about because the possibilities are really endless.
They are. And remember, no matter what you choose to learn, the most important thing is to approach it with curiosity and enthusiasm.
And that willingness to embrace the unknown.
Exactly. That's where the magic happens.
Embracing the unknown, I love that it really captures the spirit of this whole self-directed learning thing.
It does, doesn't it? It's not about having all the answers. It's about, like, having that courage to ask the questions and then, to go on that journey of discovery.
Yeah, and it's not always a solo journey either, right? Like we've talked about how important it is to connect with other people.
Oh, absolutely. Finding mentors, building a learning network, that's huge.
It is. It's like, you've got your map and your compass, but you've also got like this community of fellow explorers to kind of share the journey with.
I like that analogy. Okay, so speaking of embarking on a journey, what are some actionable steps that our listeners can take, like right now, to start incorporating this into their own lives?
That's a great question. And I think one of the simplest but most effective things that Bowles suggests is to start by identifying something you're genuinely curious about.
Okay, so pick a topic, a skill, anything.
Anything. It could be learning a new language. It could be mastering a musical instrument. It could be like diving into the world of astrophysics.
Yeah, whatever gets you fired up.
Exactly. And don't overthink it. Just choose something that like sparks your interest and make you want to learn more.
Makes sense. So once you've got that, what's next?
Bowles suggests setting a small, achievable goal.
Okay, so nothing too crazy.
Yeah, keep it simple. It could be as simple as like spending 30 minutes each day reading about your chosen subject, or watching a tutorial video, or practicing a new skill. The key is to make it manageable, something you can actually stick to.
So build that momentum.
Exactly. It's about creating that consistency.
Consistency is key. And, it's so easy to get caught up in the excitement of starting something new. And then, set these unrealistic expectations for yourself.
Oh, yeah, I've been there.
And then you end up burning out.
Totally.
But Bowles' approach is much more sustainable. It's about that gradual progress and celebrating those small wins along the way.
Yeah, it's about the journey, not just the destination.
Exactly. Oh, and another tip that I really liked was the idea of scheduling dedicated time for learning.
Oh, yeah, that's huge.
Actually block it out in your calendar, like you would for a meeting or a doctor's appointment.
Treat it with the same level of importance.
Exactly. Make it a non-negotiable part of your schedule.
Because otherwise it's so easy to let it slip.
It is. It's like, oh, I'll get to it later. And then later never comes.
Exactly. And the more you prioritize learning, the more it just becomes like a natural part of your routine,
Yeah, it becomes a habit, not something you have to force yourself to do.
Exactly. And once you've kind of established that habit, then it's time to start exploring all the amazing resources that are out there.
So many resources.
We've talked about the internet, online learning platforms, but there are also libraries, bookstores, museums, community centers.
Yeah, get out there and explore.
Right. Be curious, try new things. Don't limit yourself to just one avenue of learning.
I love that. It's about remembering that learning isn't just about sitting alone with a book or a computer screen.
Right.
It's about engaging with the world around you, connecting with others, sharing your own knowledge and experiences.
It's a much bigger picture.
It is. It's about becoming a more well-rounded, engaged, and fulfilled individual.
This has been such an incredible conversation. I feel like we've only just scratched the surface of all that self-directed learning has to offer.
I know, right?
So I want to give a huge thank you to Blake Boles for sharing his insights in the art of self-learning and for reminding us that we all have the power to become the masters of our own learning destinies.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
We hope you've been inspired to take charge of your own learning journey. And remember, no matter where you are on that path, never stop being curious, never stop exploring, and never stop seeking out knowledge that, sets your soul on fire.
That's what it's all about. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Until next time, keep those minds curious and those learning spirits bright.
And that's a wrap on this week's Deep Dive. Got a book you love and want us to explore? Let us know. Your book could be next. Don't forget to subscribe and smash the like if you enjoy the show, and share with your fellow book lovers. Until next time, keep reading, keep thinking, and we'll see you in the next chapter.